accessible do you want your server to be for everyone else? That is a hard topic. Because one could say you want your server to be more accessible to everyone that is available to be able to play your server because you want more people playing your server. That means you're a more popular option for society. Your server is more popular to play with. But honestly, they can go fuck themselves. Because accessibility is honestly one of a hard topic to talk about. Because you want your players to be able to play your server. You want to have more players. You want to be a talk of the crowd. You want your server to be something to be talked about, to be remembered, historical. I know that seems a little dramatic, but honestly, as I say already, having it least accessible to some players might make it a better server. Circle Tunes HD, a very good content creator, talked about this, which I'm also. Dark Souls is very. Its accessibility may not be accessible to some people because they're inexperienced, they're unable, they're unmotivated to keep going through that game because that game is too tough. And some people like that. They like that other people can't beat the game, they can't fight the bosses, they can't beat shit. They suck at the game while other people are still striving, they're going, they have the mental capability to keep going. That is accessibility. How accessible do you want your server? That is the question. Because at the end of the day, I want, personally, I want a server that I can have mentally strong, mentally willed people to play my server while also still being accessible to as many people as possible because the Minecraft Xbox One Edition community is a very small community. Unlike if I was doing the Windows Edition, which I would have a more bigger surface area of community to cover. I could pick out the pieces of pie that I want from that community when this community is a bit smaller. I can't pick out as many pieces I want. I can't have a bigger piece. I'm only hindering myself as much pie I want if I make it least accessible. But, like I said, some people in the community, some players might find that more enjoyable. They might enjoy that some people can't play the server. That makes them feel more exclusive. That makes them feel more of an individual. That they're a higher tier. They're better than people. I understand ego is not very good to have. But that might that might motivate a player to play your server more often because it's inaccessible to some people. And that's a good focal point. So, one way to make your server, I'm going to go on this. One way to make your server least accessible is by having harder, more stricter starting items. So, you may have a food source that is more, you have to consume more often, that may give you least hunger, like a carrot. A carrot gives you half a hunger bar. Half a fucking hunger bar. Just throw me a piece of shit at this point. I mean, you're making the player have to consume more. That makes the player have to pick up more food because if they don't pick more food, they may not have enough food to survive throughout their little trip, their little adventure. Another thing that could be least accessible is having a shit starter kit. Sharp is nothing. Then that's least accessible because a player is basically just fighting with their fist. they might have not as well just have a weapon at all. And some people might be too inexperienced to be able to fight with just their fist. If it's being another player versus another player, or if it's being a PvE player versus entity, if I'm fighting like a Wither skeleton. I might be able to kill a Wither skeleton because I'm lucky enough to not to get to hit when I'm using like an iron sword. But if I have a fist, that means I have more chances of getting hit, at which my luck might decrease and the value of me getting hit increases, at which I'll most likely die more often than not. It's those chances. The least I give to a player, the more chances their failure rate will succeed. That value will go greater. And that's causes the inaccessibility to grow as a value go greater. So, how do you make your server more accessible? You do the opposite shit. You make starter kits more transparent, gives more. I might give in my server a single chest piece, maybe a single piece of like a helmet. While in your server you might give full prot 1, as well as maybe like a pickaxe, a wooden pickaxe, a stone pickaxe. Accessibility might not only be just damage and defense, it might be durability. So if I give my players a golden sword, yes, they're doing more damage, but they have to use it more carefully because their durability runs out faster than it is with like a stone or iron sword. So durability is another factor in the whole thing of it, accessibility. Accessibility in all terms is just how hard do you want the player to have to fight for, have to earn, have to play to be able to survive. If you want it to be least accessible, their survival rate should be lower. You should give them less resources. You could also just turn off natural regeneration. Yeah, you might as well just bend me over at that point. Because that forces the player to have to carry around potions of healing, golden apples, something that they have to actually heal themselves, something that has to give regeneration or healing capabilities, at which, of course, food can't just provide. Food then becomes its own element of just starvation. So we may not have mods that allows like water but turning off natural regen becomes kind of that hunger bar, just its own element. And then healing hearts becomes its own element as well. Separation creates defining features and creates least accessibility to some players because you have to focus on more things. I now have to focus on not starving, at which it doesn't heal me also if I eat. So then I have to focus on not dying as often and focusing on how much hearts I take. That's all becoming more least accessible to the players because more players have to focus on surviving than maybe the actual server itself. So least accessible can also hinder the server because it makes it more unplayable to some players, at which they focus on too many things, and then your server becomes unplayable. All coming rounding all the way back to Dark Souls. Because Dark Souls, you focus on a bunch of shit. You focus on not getting rammed by the next boss, by focusing on how much Estus Flask you have, focusing on how to parry, how to block, how to dodge 3 or 4 enemies at a time, arrows, fire, trying not to fall off. Maybe you have to make this stupid jump. All in all, makes a server accessible, unaccessible, and that defines your server. So yes, inaccessibility is bad, but it defines your server as a server some players may avoid, and that makes other players be like, ha, you can't do this shit. You can't do what I can do. And that runs back to ego. And all in all, just making your server more favorable to some players as well as unfavorable to some players, defining you as you could go into more historical, define you as another server in this legacy. And accessibility is great, but used at the wrong focus point, it could kill your server. And that's all I'm going to leave you today. Have a good day.